I mean, picture this. You can easily work a grueling, 10-hour shift at your job, right? You can solve complex logistical problems, manage difficult personalities, and just navigate a high-stakes meeting without even breaking a sweat.
Oh, absolutely. You're a completely functional adult.
Right, but then, the very next morning, you find yourself standing completely frozen in your own kitchen. You are just utterly immobilized by the prospect of spending, I don't know, 3.5 minutes unloading the dishwasher.
Yeah, it's completely baffling.
It is. And why does a haphazard stack of plates have the power to just completely break our psychological resolve?
Well, it's what we call the paradox of domestic paralysis.
Yeah.
Because, we are highly capable beings out in the world, but inside our homes, we just find ourselves negotiating with reality.
Like hoping the mess just vanishes.
Exactly. Secretly hoping the laws of physics will temporarily suspend themselves so we just don't have to deal with the crows on the counter.
And that bizarre, deeply human paradox is exactly what we are getting into on today's deep dive. Because we are looking at a seemingly innocuous piece of source material.
Which is really interesting material.
Yeah, it's titled Easy English Listening Practice, How to Talk About Housework in English. Now, if you just glance at that title, you'd assume it's a dry, straightforward guide for ESL learners on how to say mop or broom.
Right, which, on a purely functional level it is. But when you actually look closer at the specific vocabulary and the anecdotes they use to teach these terms, something much deeper emerges.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, this source inadvertently provides this complete psychological profile of how humans handle the stress, the procrastination, and honestly, the low-level warfare of shared living spaces.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the way this source frames the entire conversation, it starts with this brilliant distinction. It separates housework from chores.
Yes, that distinction is crucial.
And to explain it, the transcript uses a visual. It basically compares housework to the forest and chores to the individual trees. But I actually want to take that a step further for you listening to really get at the mechanics of why we hate this so much.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Think of housework as the climate and chores as the weather. So housework is this persistent underlying condition of entropy you constantly live in. It's the grand, unending mission of just keeping a structure habitable.
The climate, right.
But chores. Chores are the sun and thunderstorms you actually have to react to today. Like the trash needs to go out right now, or the kitchen is going to smell.
That mechanism explains the exhaustion perfectly, honestly. Because you can't really finish the climate. Housework is a permanent state of being, which is just inherently overwhelming to the brain.
You never win.
Exactly. So by breaking it down into chores, the weather, our brains try to make the infinite feel finite. But even with that mental trick, there are specific thunderstorms that universally test the limits of human endurance.
Like the dishes.
Oh, the dishes.
Or, as the source notes for British English speakers, washing up. The transcript calls this the universally hated task. And it introduces this fantastic idiom to describe our avoidance strategy. It says the dishes are piling up.
Which is such a vivid image.
Right. They don't just sit there. They accumulate. They build into this physical, vertical manifestation of our procrastination. Which brings us to this incredible anecdote in the source about a flatmate standoff over a completely paralyzed sink.
Yeah, the dynamic of flatmates or roommates in the U.S., it turns a basic chore into a complex game theory scenario.
A literal Cold War.
Literally. The source describes a flat with 3 people. And, they have this theoretical agreed-upon system for doing the dishes. But as we all know, theoretical systems fall apart at first contact with reality.
They completely abandon the system. They just watch the dishes pile up in the sink, engaging in this silent war of attrition, just waiting to see who is going to crack first.
Well, let's look at the psychology of that word, crack. What's fascinating here is that we are borrowing the language of harsh interrogations and military siege tactics to describe cleaning a frying pan.
That is so true.
Right. Cracking implies a structural failure of willpower. It means you are the first one to break under the psychological pressure of the mess. In shared living, doing a chore out of turn isn't just cleaning. It actually feels like conceding a defeat.
You feel like you've taken the sucker's payoff.
Yeah.
And the standoff in this anecdote gets so extreme that the sink becomes a solid block of dirty ceramic and metal. There is physically zero space left.
It's totally gridlocked.
Yes. So one of the flatmates, absolutely refusing to be the one who cracks, calmly walks into the bathroom and washes his single coffee cup in the bathroom sink. Just the one cup, completely ignoring the structural collapse of the kitchen.
It's an astounding workaround, honestly. He basically treats the kitchen as occupied territory.
Oh my God, yes.
Rather than engage with the bottleneck of the broken system, he establishes an entirely new supply line in the bathroom. I mean, it perfectly illustrates how shared living spaces push us to the absolute edge of reason.
We will do anything to avoid losing.
We really will. We will endure extreme inconvenience, like washing dishes right next to our toothbrushes, just to avoid losing a silent psychological battle.
But wait, I'm looking at this and thinking about the moments when there is no opponent. Because this standoff happens because it's a shared space, right?
Right, the roommate dynamic.
But what happens when the mess is strictly ours? When there is no flatmate to wage a cold war against, suddenly the strict rules of hygiene seem to just bend entirely. And that brings us to the bedroom and the phenomenon of the laundry chair.
Ah, yes, the domain of acceptable chaos.
Yes.
The source notes that whether you call it doing the laundry or, the British phrase doing the washing, the actual machine part is easy. It's the final step that breaks us.
It really is.
We wash them, dry them, but then we just dump a massive mountain of clean clothes onto a chair in the corner of the room where they just live for weeks.
I have to push back on how the source characterizes this, though, because the transcript actually defends the laundry chair.
It does, yeah.
It calls it a manageable level of chaos because the clothes are clean. But, I mean, come on. Is a 2-week-old pile of clothes on a chair really a manageable level of chaos? Or are we just collectively gaslighting ourselves?
Well, it's a coping mechanism.
Exactly. It's not chaos management. That is a monument to our failure to finish the final step of a chore. We've essentially accepted a pile of clothes as a permanent structural piece of furniture in our homes.
You're right to be skeptical, but think about the cognitive load happening here. The source defends it because it instinctively separates biological hygiene from spatial order.
Okay, how so?
Well, the washing machine handled the hygiene part. The clothes are clean, they won't make you sick, but folding them and putting them into specific drawers, that is purely about spatial order.
And that takes actual brain power.
Exactly. It requires dozens of micro-decisions. Does this shirt hang and fold? Where do the socks go? By the time we get to that step, we experience severe task fatigue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the brain categorizes the first 3 steps as high-priority survival and the final step as optional aesthetics.
So the laundry chair is basically the purgatory of hygiene. It's clean enough to wear, but we just don't have the executive function to put it away.
Pretty much.
That actually makes a lot of sense. We just rebrand our cognitive depletion as a manageable level of chaos. And this negotiation with our environment extends to the floors, too. The source gets into the terminology like vacuuming in American English versus hoovering in the UK.
Right, the brand name Hoover becoming a generic verb, much like Google. It shows how ubiquitous the technology is. But the actual mechanical act of vacuuming introduces a completely different pressure.
The social contract, because the source shares this hilarious story about stealth vacuuming.
Oh, the neighbor story, yes.
Yeah, this person had an old vacuum cleaner that literally sounded like a jet engine testing its turbines right in the living room. And every time they turned it on, the sweet older neighbor next door would immediately knock on the shared apartment wall because the vibration was so intense.
So they adapted. Instead of giving up, they engaged in stealth vacuuming.
It's so fun.
Running this incredibly loud machine in furious, like 20-second bursts, pausing in dead silence to listen for a knock on the wall, and then just hitting the power switch again.
It's literally a covert military operation for dust removal.
It really is.
Eventually, they had to buy a new, quieter vacuum just to save the relationship with the neighbor. But it highlights something crucial, I think. Our chores aren't just private battles against entropy.
No, not at all.
They are deeply restricted by the acoustics and the proximity of the people living around us. We are constantly trying to achieve domestic order without causing a social breach.
Exactly. And that connection to the outside world, the neighbors, the community, is what forces us out of our internal procrastination loops.
Yeah.
We can negotiate with ourselves about the laundry chair forever. The chair won't complain. But certain chores are tied to external infrastructure. And honestly, nothing represents a hard, unforgiving deadline quite like the trash.
Oh, the trash. Or, to use the source's British terminology, taking out the rubbish or the bins, which are collected by a bin lorry instead of a garbage truck.
The vocabulary changes, but the panic is universal.
The panicked human behavior is identical across the globe. The source introduces the idiom putting it off, which is delaying a task indefinitely. And it gives us this absolute masterpiece of a story about a young adult living alone for the first time.
A classic scenario.
Right. They desperately want to be responsible, but they constantly forget that Tuesday morning is collection day.
Leading to the inevitable 7 a.m. pajama sprint.
Yes. They hear the heavy diesel rumble of the bin lorry outside. They jolt awake in a total panic, sprint downstairs in their pajamas, and physically drag the plastic bin out into the freezing cold street while the truck is literally pulling away from the curb.
Just barely making it.
And the most revealing part, the source says they did this every single Tuesday for 3 months straight. A 3-month streak of adrenaline-fueled sprints before they finally thought to just, set an alarm on their phone.
Well, let's dissect why that actually happens, because if we connect this to the bigger picture of executive dysfunction, it's a classic case of urgency addiction.
Urgency addiction, okay.
Yeah, taking the bin out the night before takes exactly the same amount of physical energy as doing it at 7 a.m. But the night before, the threat isn't real.
Yeah.
The brain is just saying, oh, we could put this off.
Right, there's no consequence yet.
Exactly. But the auditory trigger, the actual sound of the bin lorry, provides this massive spike of cortisol and adrenaline. It overrides the procrastination circuit entirely.
Wow.
We essentially require the simulated life or death panic of missing the truck just to perform a task that takes maybe 45 seconds.
We weaponize our own panic to get things done. And that urgency addiction isn't just reserved for the garbage. It brings us to a really fascinating distinction the source makes between tidying up and cleaning.
Yes, very different concepts.
Because we use those words interchangeably all the time, but they're completely different mechanisms. The source defines tidying up as organizing. Putting books on a shelf, folding a blanket, basically clearing the visual field.
Whereas cleaning is the deeper chemical process.
Yeah.
It's the actual removal of dirt, dust, and grime. Mopping, scrubbing, sanitizing.
Right.
You can tidy a room to perfection without actually cleaning a single surface.
You can just shove all the mail into a drawer, kick the shoes under the sofa, and boom, the room is tidy, even if the floor is covered in a layer of dust.
Exactly.
Realistically, we know we should do both. But the source points out that we mostly avoid both until we receive the ultimate external trigger. Guests are coming over.
The ultimate motivator. The arrival of guests triggers what the source calls the midnight clean.
The midnight clean.
It's the phenomenon of doing 3 weeks' worth of ignored domestic labor in an Olympic-level 45-minute sprint right before the doorbell rings.
It's the domestic equivalent of cramming for a final exam.
Yeah.
You are literally manufacturing a panic. Which makes me wonder if panic is the only thing that works, is the ultimate life hack for maintaining a clean house, just constantly inviting people over.
I mean, it would certainly keep the house tidy, but it would probably lead to a total nervous breakdown.
That's true.
Because we have to look at what is actually happening during that midnight sprint. When guests are 10 minutes away, you aren't deep cleaning the grout in the bathroom tiles.
Literally not.
No, you are exclusively tidying. You are hiding the clutter. Why? Because cleaning is a private battle against biology, bacteria and dirt. But tidying is a public battle for social survival.
Oh, wow.
It's highly performative. We want our guests to believe we live in a state of constant, effortless competence. We hide our baseline entropy so we just don't feel judged.
It is pure theater. We are frantically shoving our laundry chairs into the closet so our friends think we are perfectly functional adults. But the guests eventually go home. The curtain falls. And we are left dealing with the day-to-day reality, usually with the people we actually share the lease with.
And this is exactly where the source transitions into the vocabulary of the shared burden. Because once the adrenaline of the midnight clean wears off, the resentment can easily set in if the workload isn't balanced.
Yeah. The transcript highlights the phrase pulling your weight. It means doing your fair share, dividing the chores equitably. But I think this idiom is way heavier than it sounds.
How so?
Well, it implies that the household is this heavy object being carried by 2 or more people. If you drop your end, if you don't pull your weight, the object doesn't just sit there. Its entire weight transfers to the other person.
That is a highly accurate way to view it, actually. Because pulling your weight is rarely just about the physical calories burned running the vacuum.
Right.
It is about the mental load. The cognitive labor of noticing that the trash is full, remembering to buy dish soap, and tracking the laundry cycle.
The invisible work.
Yes. When someone isn't pulling their weight, they aren't just being lazy. They're implicitly communicating that their partner or flatmate's time is worth less than their own.
Man, that is a heavy emotional burden to place on a pile of dishes. And the language we use to describe the state of the house reflects those massive emotional swings, too.
It really does.
The source gives us two extremes. On one end, we have spotless, perfectly clean, not a single spot, the absolute holy grail of domestic achievement.
And on the exact opposite end, you have the British expression, a tip.
A tip, yeah.
A tip is a literal rubbish dump.
Mm.
So when someone walks into their living room and says, this place is an absolute tip, they are declaring that their personal sanctuary has devolved into an unlivable wasteland.
And the source outlines this eternal, unbreakable cycle between the two. The place is a tip, the frustration builds until someone finally cracks. They do a massive, grueling, big clean.
The big clean, yeah.
And for a fleeting, glorious, shining moment, the place is spotless. And the source notes exactly what we say in that moment. We look around, exhausted, and we declare, I'm never letting it get like that again.
The most common and necessary lie we tell ourselves.
Okay, so what does this all mean? When we stand in a spotless kitchen and say that, do we actually believe it? Or is that just a necessary delusion to cope with the reality that the cycle is eternal?
Well, if we look at the physics of it, it has to be a necessary delusion. Entropy is the default state of the universe. Dust falls. Dishes are soiled. The tip will always return because life simply generates mess.
It's unavoidable.
Right. But the dramatic leap from a tip to spotless represents a profound emotional shift. When our environment is a tip, we feel entirely out of control. When it is spotless, we feel immense agency.
We feel like we've won.
Exactly. Saying, I will never let it get like this again, is our attempt to permanently hold on to that feeling of control. We know, logically, that the dust will return tomorrow. But in that brief, spotless moment, we need the delusion of permanent victory just to gather the psychological strength to fight the battle all over again next week.
Wow. It is the ultimate expression of human optimism against the forces of nature. So to bring it all together for you listening, what this source reveals is that whether you call the vehicle outside your window a garbage truck or a bin lorry, and whether you are hoovering or vacuuming, the instinct to avoid these tasks until the absolute last second is a universal trait.
It really is universal.
We are all engaged in the same silent standoffs. We are all hiding our laundry chairs. This rich, descriptive language is just the thread that binds us together in our shared, somewhat chaotic, perpetually procrastinating lives.
And it leaves us with an incredibly interesting question to consider, too.
Oh, what's that?
Well, this source material proves just how emotionally charged and vibrant our vocabulary is around avoiding and struggling with manual housework. We have standoffs, we crack under pressure, we engage in stealth operations.
Right.
If future technology, like fully autonomous household robots, ever truly eliminates these physical chores, will these stress-filled, hyper-specific phrases just disappear from the human experience entirely? Or will human nature prevail, and will we simply invent an entirely new vocabulary for procrastinating on emptying the robot's dust filter?
Oh, I mean, we will absolutely find a way to procrastinate on robot maintenance. I guarantee it.
No doubt about it.
Until then, the next time you find yourself standing perfectly still in the doorway of your kitchen, just frozen in terror at the sight of the dishes piling up, don't panic. Just take a deep breath, blame it on the need to maintain a manageable level of chaos, and maybe give it another 5 minutes to see if it magically cleans itself.